This is Concept E classes, and today we'll deal Chapter 7 of Class 8 Social Science History, Civilizing the Native, Educating the Nation. So in this chapter, first we'll see how the Britishers saw the Indian education, and we'll study about the tradition of Orientalism, and some of the Britishers considered the East education full of errors, and they introduced an education which was fit for commerce. So we'll study more about this in this chapter. Then we'll see what happened to the local schools through the report of William Adam, and we'll also discuss some of the new routines and the new rules established by the Britishers at that time. Then finally we'll see about the agenda for a national education and the view on this Indian education by two great personalities. One was Mahatma Gandhi and one was Rabindranath Tagore. In the previous chapters, we saw how the British rule affected the Rajas, the Nawabs, the peasants and the tribals. In this chapter, we'll try to understand what implication the British had on the lives of the students, or what effect the British had on the Indian students. Now, the British in India, they not only wanted to conquer territories, but they also felt that they had a cultural mission. They had to civilize the natives, change their customs and values. Or in simple words, we can say that the Britishers, they wanted to civilize the Indians by changing their customs and values. So first let's see how the Britishers saw education. So let us see what the Britishers thought about Indian education, how they developed their own views about how Indians were to be educated, and we'll also see how the Indians reacted to the British ideas. So first let's understand about Orientalism. What do you mean by Orientalism? Orientalism is the imitation or the depiction of aspects in the Eastern world, or in simple words we can say that Orientalism is the study of languages, literature, religion, philosophies, histories, arts and laws of Asian societies, especially the ancient ones. So these depictions are usually done by writers, designers and artists from the West, and those with a scholarly knowledge or with a good knowledge of language and culture of Asia are called as Orientalist. So let's see one of an Orientalist named William Jones. He arrived in Calcutta in 1783. He was appointed as a junior judge at the Supreme Court. Now, William Jones, he was not only an expert in law, but he was a linguist as well. What do you mean by a linguist? A linguist is a person who knows or studies several languages. He had studied Greek and Latin at Oxford. He knew French and English. He also picked up Arabic from a friend, and he also learned Persian. So this is where we can see William Jones studying Persian. So at Calcutta, he learned Sanskrit, grammar and poetry from the Pandits. And he also studied ancient Indian texts on law, philosophy, religion, politics, morality, arithmetic, medicine and other sciences as well. Now Jones discovered that his interest was shared by many other British officials living in Calcutta at that time. Englishmen like Henry Thomas Colebrook and Nathaniel Halhed. They were also busy discovering the ancient Indian heritage, mastering Indian languages, and they even translated Sanskrit and Persian works into English. So together with them, Jones set up an Asiatic Society of Bengal and started a journal called as Asiatic Researchers. So Jones and Colebrook, they shared a deep respect for the ancient cultures of both India as well as the West. They felt that the Indian civilization had attained its glory in the ancient past. That is, India had a glorious past, but it had subsequently divided. So in order to understand India, it was necessary to discover the sacred and the legal texts that were produced in the ancient period, and only by the new study of these texts could form a basis for the future development of India. They went on discovering about ancient texts, understanding their meaning, translating them and making their findings known to others. They believed that this project would not only help the British learn about Indian culture, but also help Indians rediscover their own heritage, understand the lost glories of the past. And in this process, the British would become the guardians of Indian culture as well as its masters. So, influenced by such ideas, many company officials argued that the British should promote Indian learning rather than Western learning. They also felt that many institutions should be set up to encourage the study of ancient Indian texts, Sanskrit, Persian literature, and poetry as well. The officials also thought that the Hindus and the Muslims they ought to be taught what they were familiar with and what they valued and treasured. So, with this objective in mind, a madrasa was set up in Calcutta in 1781. A madrasa is a term, an Arabic word for the place of learning, like a school or a college. So, it was set up by Warren Hastings, the first Governor General of East India Company, to promote the study of Arabic, Persian, and Islamic law. And a Hindu college was established in Banaras in 1791 to encourage the study of Sanskrit text by Jonathan Duncan as well. Now, not all officials shared these views. Many were very strong in the criticism of Orientalists. Grave errors of the East. That's what some of the Britishers thought about our education. From the early 19th century, many British officials began to criticize the Orientalist version of learning. They even argued with the British, saying that it was wrong for the British to spend so much effort in encouraging the study of Arabic, Sanskrit language as well as literature. They said that the knowledge of East was full of errors and unscientific thoughts, and the Eastern literature was non-serious and light-hearted. So James Mill was one of those critics who attacked the Orientalists. He declared that the British should not teach what the natives wanted or respected. He said that the aim of education ought to be taught what was useful and practical, and the Indians should be made familiar with the scientific and technical advances that the West had made rather than the poetry and the sacred literature of the Orient. So this was the perception of James Mill. Now, by 1830, the attack on Orientalists became sharper, and one of the most outspoken and influential of such critics of that time was Thomas Babington Macaulay. He saw India as an uncivilized country that need to be civilized, and according to him, no branch of Eastern knowledge could be compared to what England had produced. He even declared that who would deny that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. So he urged that the British should stop wasting public money in promoting Oriental learning. He felt that the knowledge of English would allow Indians to read more of the finest literature of the world and make them aware of the developments in Western science and philosophy. So, with so much passion, Macaulay emphasized the teaching of English could thus be a way of civilizing the people, changing their taste, values, and culture. So what Macaulay did was that he presented a minute. Minute is like a very important document on Indian education, saying that it is very important to impart English education to the Indian natives. So following this Macaulay's minute, the English Education Act of 1835 was introduced. Now this act was actually a legislative act by William Hastings to reallocate the funds which was required by the British to spend on the education and literature in India. So the decision was mainly to make English the medium of instruction for higher education, that is to make it English medium in schools and colleges, and to stop the promotion of Oriental institutions like the Calcutta Madrasa and the Banaras Sanskrit College. And the English textbooks also now began to be produced for schools. So the Britishers thought of an education for commerce. So in 1854, the Court of Directors of the East India Company in London sent an educational dispatch or like an educational message to the Governor General in India. And this dispatch came to be known as the Wood's Dispatch, as it was issued by Charles Wood, the president of the board of control of the company. Now this Wood dispatch actually suggested that the primary schools must adopt local languages, the higher secondary school must adopt both English as well as local languages, and at the college level the English should be the medium of education. Or in short, we can say that it emphasized on European learning rather than Oriental knowledge, and it emphasized on the practical benefits of the system of European learning. And one of the practical uses of this dispatch pointed to was economic. How? It said that the European learning would enable Indians to recognize the advantages that flow from the expansion of trade and commerce. It would make Indians see the importance of developing resources of the country and would introduce them to European ways of living. And the Indians would change their taste and desire, thereby creating a demand for the British goods and buy things that were produced in Europe. If you want to know more about this Michaelis Minute or Wood Dispatch, message me in the comment section. I'll give you a separate lecture on these topics. The Woods Dispatch also argued that the European learning would improve the moral character of Indians, thereby providing the company with civil servants who could be trusted and dependent upon. So, according to the Wood Dispatch, the literature of East was full of grave errors and it could not instill or provide a people a sense of duty and commitment, nor could it develop the skills required for administration. So, if the European learning was provided to the Indians, it would make them truthful and honest. And following the 1854 dispatch, several measures were introduced by the British. Education departments of the government were set up to extend control over all the matters regarding education. Steps were taken to establish a system of university education, and in 1857 universities were established in Calcutta, Madras and Bombay as well. And attempts were also made to bring about the changes within the system of school education. So during this time, what happened to the local schools? Do you have any idea how the children were taught before the Britishers came to India? Do all these children used to go to the schools? And if they went to the schools, what happened to them under the British rule? So that's what we're going to see in the next topic. So let's understand what happened to the local schools through the report of William Adam. In 1830, the company asked William Adam, who was he? He was a Scottish missionary, to report on the progress of education in vernacular schools. Now, this term vernacular, it refers to the local language spoken by a community in a region. And vernacular medium schools use their local language to impart education. So, William Adam, he toured the districts of Bengal and Bihar, and the report of Adam was very interesting. He found over 1 lakh Pathashalas in Bengal and Bihar. Now, Pathashalas are small institutions with 20 students each, and the total number of students being taught in these Pathashalas were over 20 lakh. And these institutions were set up by wealthy people or a local community. And at times, they were started by a teacher, or usually called as guru. And the system of education at that time was very flexible. Why was it called as flexible? Because there was no fixed fee, no printed books, no separate school building, no benches or chairs, or no blackboards. There was no system of separate classes, no roll call registers, no examinations, and no regular timetable. Sometimes the classes were held under a banyan tree, or sometimes a corner of a village shop or a temple, or at the guru's house as well. And the fees, it depended on the income of the parents. Sometimes the rich had to pay more than the poor. And the teaching, it was oral. The guru decided what to teach in accordance with the need of the students. And students were not separated out of different classes. All of them sat together in one place. And the guru interacted separately with the groups of children with different levels of learning. Adam also discovered that this flexible system suited the local needs of the children. How? Because classes were not held during the harvest time, when the rural children often worked in the fields, and the Pathashala started only when the crops have been cut and stored. This meant that even the children of peasant or the poor families could study. Then new routines and new rules came. So up to mid-19th century, the company was concerned mainly with higher education. So it allowed the local Pathashalas to function without much interference. But after 1854, the company decided to improve the system of vernacular education. It felt that it could be done by introducing order within the system, imposing certain routines, establishing certain rules, and ensuring regular inspections. So what did the company do? It appointed a number of government pandits, each in charge of looking after 4 to 5 schools. So the task of the pandit was to visit the Pathashalas and try to improve the standard of teaching. Now each teacher had to submit periodic reports and take classes according to regular timetable. and teaching was now based on textbooks, and learning was tested through examination. So these people brought exams to our education system, and students were asked to pay a regular fee, attend regular classes, sit on fixed seats, and obey the new rules of discipline as well. So Padashalas which accepted these new rules were supported through government grants, and those who were unwilling received no government support. But these new rules and routines also had consequences. Earlier, the children from the poor families had been able to go to Padashalas since the timetable was flexible. But the new system demanded regular attendance, even during the harvest time when the children of the poor families had to work in the fields. So, inability to attend the school came to be seen as an indiscipline, saying that it was a lack of desire to learn. Hence, this new rule and routines it affected the children from the poor families. So the last topic is the agenda for national education. So not only the British officials but many thinkers from different parts of India also began to talk of the need for a wider spread of education. Indians felt that the Western education would help them modernize India, and they urged the Britishers to open more and more schools, colleges and universities and spend more money on education. However, there were Indians like Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore who reacted against this Western education. So let's see what they had to say about this. So first let's see the view of Mahatma Gandhi on this education. He said that the English education has enslaved us. Mahatma Gandhi argued that the colonial education created a sense of inferiority in the minds of Indians. It made Indians see Western civilization as superior and destroyed the pride the Indians had on their own culture. Gandhiji said that there was poison in this education. Charmed by the West, the Indians educated in these institutions began admiring the British rule. Mahatma Gandhi wanted an education that could help the Indians recover the sense of dignity and self-respect. And during the national movement, he urged the students to leave the educational institutions in order to show the British that the Indians were no longer willing to be enslaved. Mahatma Gandhi strongly felt that the Indian languages must be the medium of teaching because he said that the education in English distanced the Indians from their own social surroundings and made them strangers in their own land. And the English education was unable to relate itself with local masses as well. So, according to Mahatma Gandhi, he said that Western education focused on reading and writing rather than oral knowledge. He argued that education should develop a person's mind and soul. He said that literacy or simple learning or to read and write itself did not count as education. People had to work with their hands, learn a craft, and know how different things operated. This would help to develop their mind and their capacity to understand. As this national sentiment spread, many other thinkers also began to think that the system of national education, which would be radically different from that set up by the British. Now let's see the view of Tagore on this education. Rabindranath Tagore, he started the institution named Shanti Niketan in 1901, the Abode of Peace. As a child, Tagore always found his schooling very suffocating and oppressive, and the school appeared like a prison to him. So this experience of his school days in Calcutta shaped Tagore's idea of education. He wanted to set up a school where the child was happy, where he or she could be free and creative, where he was able to explore her own thoughts and desires. So Tagore felt that the childhood must be a time of self-learning. Teachers had to be imaginative, understand the child, and help the child develop her curiosity. Now, according to Tagore, the existing rigid and restricting discipline of the schooling system killed the natural desire of the child to be creative. It killed her sense of wonder. So Tagore was of view that creative learning could be encouraged only within a natural environment, not in built school classrooms. That's why he chose to set up a school 100 kilometers away from Calcutta in a rural setting. He saw it as an abode of peace. That's what he called as Shanti Niketan, where living in harmony with nature, children could cultivate their natural creativity. So this is a class in progress in the Shanti Niketan in 19 30. If you notice the surroundings, we can see there are trees and open spaces. So Tagore believed that such type of education would cultivate the natural creativity of a child. Although Gandhiji and Tagoreji had similar views on education, there were differences too. Gandhiji was highly against the Western civilization and its worship of machines and technology. He was against every type of Western civilization and Western education. Whereas Tagore, he wanted to combine the elements of modern Western civilization with what he saw the best with Indian tradition. That is, he wanted to combine both the Western civilization with the Indian tradition. He emphasized the need to teach science, technology at Shantiniketan along with art, music and dance. So many individuals and thinkers, they were thus thinking about a way a national education could be fashioned. Some wanted the changes within the system set up by the British and felt that the systems could be extended so as to include more people. Others, they wanted an alternative system to be created so that the people were educated into a culture that was truly national. And the debate about what this national education ought to be continued till after independence. So that's all for chapter 7, Civilizing the Native, Educating the Nation. Tune in soon for the next session. Thank you so much. May God bless you all. Take care and bye bye.